Because when politicians are making decisions about Indigenous people, it's just fair that we should have a say about those decisions. And if we had a voice, we don't think things like the intervention would have happened. We could have said to the Australian people and the Parliament, this is not the way to resolve this issue. We have the solutions. Listen to us.
It seems so simple and so direct and righteous when you put it like that. What do you think are the obstacles? Do you think there are obstacles to overcome?
Well, it's partly fear, I think. I think there's great goodwill in the Australian public today. I think sentiment towards Indigenous people and a desire to resolve these issues, this over 200-year issue, I think that has really shifted Australia to a point where they want to do something about it, but they don't want to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I think our enemies, the people that don't want any progress in this area, they seek to confuse Australians about what we're proposing. And so one of the first things that was said when the Uluru Statement was made back in 2017 was that we were calling for a third chamber to Parliament. And what they were saying there is that we were calling for a right to veto legislation.
Yeah.
It was similar to the native title days where people were scaremongering, saying, "Oh, we're going to take your backyard. You're going to lose your backyard to Indigenous people," which was completely false. But it's a similar scaremongering tactic to say Indigenous people want too much power.
Yeah.
That's not what we're saying. We're saying advisory to government. We're saying the ability to give them the right advice so they can get things right. It's not that extreme. It's quite generous, actually.
Well, you talk about the confusion and the obfuscation, and that's certainly torpedoed the previous referendum about republicanism. It was a cynical exercise to complicate the matter so much, to divide the Republicans against one another, that it stood no chance of it ever getting up. Are you fearful that something like that could happen with the proposed referendum somewhere between July next year and July 2024? Does that concern you?
Anthony Albanese, in early August at the Gama Festival on Yolngu country in Arnhem Land, has already put forward a draft question and a draft provision to establish the voice in a referendum. And it's really quite simple. The question is, pretty much, and it won't be this, but it's pretty much, do you support an amendment to the Constitution to establish a Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice? So quite a simple question. Will be, a bit more convoluted than that because of the Referendum Machinery Act. But the provision itself is only a line that says, recognising Indigenous people's connection to this place, we will establish a voice. The second line after that is that, it won't be justiciable, so it's not a third chamber to Parliament, making sure that's covered off. And then lastly, that the Parliament decides the composition, functions and powers and processes of the voice. So that's still in the hands of the Parliament. The only thing that we're doing with this constitutional change is guaranteeing that we will have a say on the decisions that are made about us. That's all it is. So I think it's much more simple than the Republic proposal back in 1999. And I think if this station, Baby Boomers Guide is really important for us to communicate just how simple and non-threatening this is, but also powerful at the same time. Genuinely practical, because in a democracy, it is a really powerful thing to have a say in to Parliament before they make decisions. It's a great thing to have that influence.
Absolutely. As I say, it seems such a simple and such a correct thing to do. One of the things that strikes me, and I say this as someone who's had the great privilege to have been invited into various Indigenous communities and work with Indigenous artists around the country. There's a perception that we have, and I know this from my background as well, that we should be homogenised, that we all think in the same way, that the moment there's any dissenting voice, then everyone throws their hands in the air and says, see, they can't agree among themselves, as though there's this expectation that all Indigenous people are the same and don't have a diversity of views. How do you get over that perception?
Yeah, look, it is difficult for us because there is this, strange idea that all Indigenous people need to agree on something before you can move forward. that dehumanizes us. We're not homogenous. We have different
Yeah.
opinions and we have strong opinions, and especially when you think of a low level of trust that we have for processes in government based on all the things that have been done to us, and all the broken promises that we've experienced over many years as well. Look, we get over that partly by helping people to understand where the Uluru Statement came from. It was an unprecedented gathering of our people in the heart of the country. It followed 13 regional dialogues that were well informed. Each of those things were 3 days each. We had an intense lesson on civics. We considered the lessons from the past, the history of our struggle, how many other statements and petitions have been dismissed and ignored, which is one of the reasons why the Uluru Statement is addressed to the Australian people, not to the Parliament. And, after all that hard work, like it was hard work and debate, because we had to listen to each other, we had to, respect each other's opinions, we had to practice reciprocity, we had to be willing to compromise amongst ourselves in the heart of the country when we made this statement. And most of us did. A few of our people walked out in protest, because they were there to protest. That was their minds made up sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of us did the hard work, and we achieved this consensus, which is a political feat that the country should celebrate in itself. And that in itself really says to people, when they learn about that, I hope it says to people that people like Warren Mundine or Jacinta Price or whoever else that have a different opinion, their opinion is fine. That's okay. Listen to their arguments. That's fine. But a consensus of our people doing that hard work and really deeply thinking about this have put forward a really generous proposal. And that holds power, that it came from that rare coming together of our people.
And after all, that is no more or less than we expect our Parliament to do anyway. We don't expect unanimity within our Parliament decision-making. Thomas, the statement from the heart mentioned treaty and truth-telling as well. How integral do you think the three elements are?
Yeah, I think they're all very important. We are a country that, for like countries, do not yet have a treaty. We're the last to have we still don't have a treaty where other countries do. And I don't think treaty is something to be afraid of. I think it's something that, is going to be a matter of negotiation like any agreement. And the way that these things happen is that there's always a middle ground that'll be found. Treaties are going to take a very long time, though. They're going to take decades. I think many of us might not even be alive by the time they reach a conclusion in the negotiations. The Indigenous treaty experts say that a treaty is going to take 30 to 40 years. So they're very complex. And we need to be working on it now, though, so eventually we can reach a settlement in this country and not have that shameful position where we're the only ones that haven't got a treaty with Indigenous people. This goes for constitutional recognition as well, Lex. We're also a rarity for like nations in not having constitutional recognition. And truth-telling is really important as well. Truth-telling is happening all the time. It's something that I'm sure, a lot of your baby boomers listeners have helped us with, just realising the truth of what's happened in this country and talking about it, around the kitchen table sort of thing. The priority, though, Lex, is the voice. And that is because it just makes, it's good logic to help the Parliament to start getting things right now without waiting for a treaty and without waiting for, more truth-telling. I think the politicians already know the truth. They don't need another report. They know the truth of the.
Well, I mean, one of the things that strikes me as well in my work generally and over the decades is the general population is very comfortable when Indigenous people culturally represent a traditional view, an ethnographic view, if you like, of Indigenous life. When it becomes contemporary, and that's when it starts to get, it starts to go into the Adam Goods area. Adam Goods is fine as long as he behaves himself and behaves how we think he should behave. But the moment he steps out of that and challenges us, we get uncomfortable. Is there a danger that the voice will go into that kind of territory and get that kind of reaction?
Look, I think sometimes it will, and that's healthy. I think it's a healthy thing for ideas to be challenged.